What's up, ma? T-sippin', rippin', New Balance vibin', Yamaha, Chevy sliding, 125 riding some bitch. This video is all about basically just explaining the way that the Supercross tracks are on MX vs. ATV Legends. I know it's, some of you guys are probably interested in what's the scaling like. Is it kind of like all out? Is it a little bit more difficult, like jump rhythm wise? I feel like people are interested just kind of in that, especially if you don't have the game yet. Because, you can see people playing gameplay on it, but you don't really, I think, get the full picture of the gameplay until you actually play it. Then you start to get that real, different gravitational pull feeling than what you had in All Out. The landing system of this game is actually pretty extensive. It's probably one of the best systems in this game. So, obviously, with Supercross, a lot more jumping. I think this game just kind of fits Supercross a little bit better than it does Motocross. Has a little bit of trouble when you start getting, roughness and ruts and shit like that. The physics don't really match up as well. But you get jump rhythms and it's okay through the whoops. I'm not gonna say it's just badass through the whoops or anything, right? But for an arcade dirt bike game, it's not just god awful. You can still crash in the whoops. I do feel like sometimes the way the tracks are pretty small scaling overall, it's kind of like they're going for a bit of a mix between the official Monster Energy Milestone Supercross game and All Out. It's kind of like you mix the two of those Supercross scaling wise, and even the jumps too. There's quite a few tracks within the Supercross list that kind of feels like a little bit of that easier type vibe, but there is a couple tracks that do have the big daddy, big rhythms. I'm not gonna say it's like Reflex stock Supercross tracks. Definitely not, that legendary. But there is a couple tracks in here where you can get it where it's tricky to hit some bigger rhythm or some kind of special line, some kind of special little hip double or whatever it happens to be. Seems like there's a couple of tracks where it's almost like that around the entire track. It's pretty skill gapped around the entire track. So I wanted to talk about the pre-made levels that you have on these different Supercross tracks. So they got a couple of them on here that's got some pretty big inside pre-made ruts. There's not as many of them as I personally would have liked to have seen. I would have liked to have seen, MX vs. ATV kind of experiment a little bit more with pre-made on these Supercross tracks, but you do have terrain deformation that can be fucking insane depending on what kind of track you're on, right? And if you're running max laps and maximum riders. I actually believe the terrain deformation on these Supercross tracks can get to the point where you literally almost can't even physically ride the bike around the track. I've been hearing that from some people, and I also noticed that myself on a couple tracks. It doesn't do it on all of them, but there's definitely some of them where it's like, holy shit, bro. Terrain deformation savage mode, bro. But yeah, the couple of tracks that do kind of have more of that pre-made, ruts in the corners kind of vibe, and there's one of them that's kind of got a real natural, on the jump faces, it kind of looks like it's got little micro ruts going over the jump faces and the landings. It's got one track's kind of like that. It's got one's kind of just got the pre-made one rut in the corners, But a lot of the tracks, I would say the majority of the Supercross tracks don't have that much pre-made. It's more of a kind of like how what the official Supercross, first official Supercross game would have been, not a whole lot of pre-made, just kind of the Supercross track, right? So, I wish MX vs. ATV would have had a couple more tracks with some more pre-made ruts and stuff. I just think it would have added more variation to the Supercross tracks a little bit. They can get a little bit repetitive. I feel like that's something that Reflex did so well. All of the Supercross tracks were so different from each other. Some of them had like, you know, metal freestyle ramps on them. You know, some of them were like smaller, realistic scaling. Some of them were like massive scaling. Some of them were super easy. Some of them were super ruddy and complicated and soft dirt. Like, you know, Reflex, I feel like with the stock Supercross tracks, it really was a good, and then if you added on the DLC Supercross tracks of Reflex into that overall content, it was even better because those tracks were different than all the other stock tracks. So it's kind of like every time you went to a track, you had a little bit of something different, you know, whether it be different difficulty or different terrain deformation level or different. And these tracks have a little bit of that, right? They do. They have a little bit of difference between them like that, but they some of them do feel different. Terrain deformation wise, it's not just like, you know, same terrain deformation across the board on all the Supercross tracks, MXM. It's literally like, you know, some tracks kind of feel more soft, therefore they're going to deform different or faster or whatever, right? So it does have that element to it, but yeah, not like a whole lot of like roughness, which I know you don't really expect that on a Supercross track, but I mean, there's not like a whole lot of that, what I call character, where it's like trying to make little micro divots in the dirt and shit to kind of give you that realistic-y feel. It's like I say, it's got a little bit of it, not a lot of it, right? There is a lot of the tracks where you'll just kind of get in that. There's not a whole lot of inside pre-made ruts. So you just do that Villapoto power slide around all the corners. There is a couple of tracks where there's like an inside pre-made rut going to a triple, like a Supercross triple, right? Like a 69-foot Supercross triple, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, bud? And those can be pretty tricky, you know, because you got to like get right in that rut without sliding out Tokyo Drift Simulator, but you also have to clutch boost right at the perfect time without sliding any to get some of those triples out of the corner if you're hitting that far inside rut. So there's a couple tracks like that. There's a couple of the tracks that I feel like are really fucking good. I feel like I showed a couple of those in this video. There's like two of them that I feel like are amazing. And then there's like a handful of them that I feel like are okay. And then there's like two or three that are just super easy. They're kind of like the beginner Supercross tracks of the game. So, but that's basically what you got. Similar to All Out. It's kind of like All Out 2.5 Supercross tracks, you know. That's basically what it is. But still nice to have Supercross tracks with all the other track content of MX vs. ATV Legends. The terrain deformation on these Supercross tracks, I definitely think, you know, some of them that rut up a lot more. I'm going to be doing some more rut tester videos, by the way, so be sure you got all notification bells hit for the Space Boy, okay? I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's just an interesting Supercross feel with the, like I said, the landing system being to where sometimes you can fully pop off, unlike Supercross 5. Sometimes you can, you know, barely come up short, and then you don't get the drive to hit the next big jump, and then you pop off. Like, there's all these interesting little moments and physics reactions that can happen within these Supercross tracks that I think really gives them a lot of replayability and a lot of you can separate yourself, man. You know, you add in the clutch boosting, which I'm not just like over the moon about a super crazy clutch boosting system, which is basically what it is on Legends, kind of like it was in Alive. At least to me, it feels like I need to be dumping the clutch everywhere almost to keep the momentum up on the bike. I don't know if that's like a bug, like that's going to be changed in this next update or not or whatever, but I'm just saying I feel like I go faster when I'm clutch boosting all over the countryside, you know what I mean? But I feel like they could tone that down a little bit and it would still be cool, you know what I mean? But, that's kind of my opinion with it, but it does add a little bit of a layer of you got to be clutch boosting at the right time in combination with leaning at the right time, having enough momentum coming around the corner. You know, it really starts bringing in all these elements like that really make you have to be on your A game if you want to hit the biggest line or the biggest rhythm every single lap for 20 laps in the D formation, you know, it kind of gives it another level. Whereas if you compare it to like the first Supercross game, you don't pop off literally anywhere ever, okay? The lack of air physics in the first Supercross game means that every time you whip, it looks the exact same. There's no variation to it. Everybody and their grandma can hit every single jump rhythm their first time ever in the game. Literally, your grandma could probably quad on the first official Monster Indy Supercross game. Spencer Turley 2022, you know what I mean? Spencer Turley 2022. We said it first, boys. Holy shit. But Legends is not like that. Your grandmama couldn't hop on this shit and quad 5.7 daddy out of these corners, you know what I mean? I just don't believe it. So that's kind of your separation right there with, you know, the Supercross tracks. I mean, I wish they would have done a couple of them that were a little more like Reflex stock track level scaling and jumps. That would have been pretty daddy mode, you know what I mean? But I don't know. I mean, it's okay. I get it. They're trying to kind of go for more of a, like, replicating the real life track, one-to-one type scaling, because they have the Lucas Oil Pro motocross tracks, which are super fucking one-to-one scaling in this game. They did not expand that scaling at all. If anything, it's maybe a little smaller, you know, than you would even think it would be in real life. But the Supercross tracks, I feel like they're probably like, some of them are more down the like 1.2 scaling, 1.2 to 1 scaling, you know, it's like a little bit bigger, not all the way to 1.5 to 1, but you see what I'm saying? It's right in that like 1.25, you know what I'm saying? 125, broski dooski dudes. Similar graphically, Supercross tracks to All Out, but a little bit different. The jumps, there's some of the tracks that are pretty challenging, some of them not as much. You kind of get into that where everybody would start to hit a similar rhythm, you know, after 5 or 10 laps or something, right? But overall, I wish they would have done a couple more of the tracks, tried to experiment a little bit bigger scaling, just to have a little bit more variation into the game with the Supercross tracks, and maybe they will do that with some DLC, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?